What if I told you there's a ghost town hidden in the pine forests of New Jersey? A place with no houses, no lights, no people. Just an empty crossroads and the ruins of something long forgotten. Locals whisper that strange things happened here. That a group of outsiders came into the woods and built a machine that could rip open reality itself. They say the town didn't just disappear with time. It vanished into another dimension. The name is Ong's Hat, and while the map shows only emptiness, the legend it left behind became one of the internet's first great conspiracies. Uncover how a crumbling ghost town became a story of outlaw scientists, forbidden experiments, and a mystery that refuses to die. The Pine Barrens aren't like other forests. They stretch for more than 1 million acres across southern New Jersey, a wilderness of pine trees, sandy soil, and marshland that swallows anything left behind. Settlers avoided this place. The soil was too thin for farming, the winters were too cruel, and those who stayed behind were swallowed by the isolation. They were called Pineys, hard people, resilient, secretive, wary of outsiders. And to the rest of New Jersey, they became figures of rumor and fear. Travelers who told stories of piney families living off the land in ways that outsiders couldn't understand. Children were warned never to wander too far into the woods, for the forest was full of strange people, strange noises, and stranger creatures. The Barrens became a land of whispers, tales of witches casting spells in the shadows of mysterious fires that burned in the distance with no source ever found, of ghostly lights drifting between the trees, vanishing the moment you followed them. And above them all, the legend of the Jersey Devil, a creature with wings and hooves and eyes that burned red in the dark. Said to have been born in the 1700s, the cursed 13th child of a woman named Leeds. It killed livestock, stalked travelers, and screamed from the treetops, a piercing, inhuman sound that froze the blood in your veins and sent even the bravest hunters fleeing into the night. The Pine Barrens were a place of silence, of fear, and of stories told in hushed voices. And it was here in this haunted wilderness that Ong's Hat took shape. Ong's Hat was never much of a town. At its height, it was little more than a mill, a handful of cabins and scattered farmland. But the name itself has puzzled people for centuries. One story says it traces back to a man named Jacob Ong, who lived here in the 1700s. He was a bit of a showman, the legend goes, who owned a flashy silk hat. So one night at a dance, when Jacob was rejected by a woman, he stormed outside and hurled his hat into a tree in frustration. It stayed lodged there for so long that travelers began to call the area Ong's Hat. But as the years went on, the forest grew back, the cabins collapsed, and the roads vanished. By the 20th century, it was nothing but a faded memory, and yet even ruins can spark imagination. Some say they saw carvings in the bark of trees, strange symbols that no one could explain. Others claim to see lantern lights bobbing in the distance, only to vanish when they approached. And as the years went on, the forest swallowed Ong's Hat whole, leaving behind only the memory of a place that never really was. In the secluded Pine Barrens of New Jersey, amidst a landscape of whispering pines and winding trails, there's a place where shadows dance and secrets linger. A place where the boundaries of reality seem to blur, and the veil between the mundane and the mystical grows thin. The Pine Barrens have long been a place of refuge, not for farmers seeking fertile lands or merchants in search of trade, but for those who craved solitude, hippies seeking an escape from the societal norms, mystics in search of a deeper connection, and those simply chasing the elusive siren song of silence. They came here to build shacks deep in the forest, far from the clamor of city streets. Others made their homes on old foundations where forgotten towns once stood, each structure a silent sentinel guarding its own tales of the past. But it was in one place in particular that these intrepid souls found the perfect backdrop for their quiet revolutions. Ong's Hat, a ghost town swallowed by the encroaching woods, a place where the silence was already deafening. Here, amidst the crumbling ruins, whispers took flight. Rumors spread like wildfire through the dense undergrowth. Talk of communes tucked away in the trees, of rituals beneath the cloak of darkness, of strange gatherings where the boundaries of belief were pushed to the edge, where philosophy intertwined with the unknown and the mystical, where laughter echoed in the night and footsteps seemed to tread on hallowed ground. Some claimed these groups were harmless dreamers, lost in a world of their own creation, while others swore they were dangerous, meddling in forces they didn't understand. Stories began to circulate of firelight flickering through the trees, of music that seemed to rise from the earth itself, only to vanish without a trace. And then there were the stories of those who went looking for these camps and never returned, lost to the labyrinthine woods forever. Harkers spoke of strange symbols carved into tree trunks, circles, triangles, and interlocking patterns that made no sense and yet seemed deliberate. Some were small, etched at eye level, as if left by curious travelers. Others were large enough to span entire trees, as if marking territory. Then there were the stories of hunters venturing deep into the woods, only to catch glimpses of soft lights weaving through the trees, always just far enough away to tempt you deeper. But when they followed, the light would vanish, leaving them in the suffocating darkness. No fire, no people, only the watchful trees. And when night fell, some swore they could hear laughter echoing through the silent woods, faint at first, then growing louder, beckoning, taunting. Those who called out were met with an eerie silence, and when dawn came, they fled, leaving the forest to its secrets. Yet despite the fear that gripped some, there were those who felt an undeniable pull towards Ong's Hat. For in the late 20th century, the whispers surrounding the ghost town were about to find a new stage. For Ong's Hat was on the verge of becoming more than a legend. It was about to step into the glaring spotlight of the internet age and become a phenomenon. And as the digital world began to take notice, the question hung in the air. Would Ong's Hat swallow those who dared to seek it out, or would it set their spirits free? By the late 1980s, the story of Ong's Hat was already strange. But what happened next pushed it far beyond rumor. Because Ong's Hat was about to collide with something new, the early internet. Before the web as we know it, there were bulletin boards, primitive online communities, glowing green text on black screens, places where researchers, hackers, and dreamers traded ideas. And in those early digital shadows, the legend of Ong's Hat began to spread. It started with photocopied pamphlets, crude zines passed hand to hand. They looked like underground manifestos, half philosophy, half forbidden science, and soon their words began to appear online. These documents spoke of a hidden laboratory buried in the Pine Barrens, a place where rogue scientists and mystics gathered after leaving mainstream society. They claimed this group had unlocked something extraordinary, a device that could slip open the fabric of reality itself. The pamphlets called it the Incunabula Papers. No one knew exactly where they came from. Some said they were leaked by insiders. Others believed they were deliberately planted, designed to lure the curious deeper. But once the papers began circulating, Ong's Hat was no longer just a ghost town. It was ground zero for a conspiracy. The documents described a group known as the Institute of Chaos Studies. They were said to be scientists, philosophers, and renegades who fled academia. Together, they blended quantum theory with meditation. They experimented with chaos mathematics, fractal patterns, and altered states of consciousness. According to the story, they created a device called the Egg, a small pod, barely larger than a coffin. When a person lay inside, surrounded by carefully tuned frequencies, the egg opened a doorway, not into dreams, but into another dimension. The Pine Barrens, they said, were the perfect hiding place, far from prying eyes, far from the reach of governments or institutions that would have shut them down. And Ong's Hat, once forgotten, became the symbol of their rebellion. Some who read the documents believed every word. Others dismissed it as clever fiction. But the timing was perfect. The internet was new, and people were hungry for secrets. Forums lit up with debate. Was Ong's Hat real? Were the Incunabula Papers genuine? Could there truly be a group in the Pine Barrens experimenting with interdimensional travel? The line between reality and fabrication blurred. Travelers flocked to New Jersey, hoping to find ruins of the lab. Some came back with stories of strange noises or flashes of light in the trees. Others found nothing but silence. But that silence only made the legend stronger. The more people searched, the more convincing the myth became. Each unanswered question was taken as proof that something was being hidden. And soon Ong's Hat wasn't just a story told around campfires. It was one of the internet's very first viral mysteries, a tale that spread from zines to message boards, from whispers to wires until it could no longer be ignored. As the story of Ong's Hat spread, the mystery only grew stranger. The Incunabula Papers were at the center of it all. dense, confusing, written in the language of science and philosophy, yet always just cryptic enough to leave you guessing. Readers pored over them, searching for hidden codes, for diagrams that might reveal how the egg really worked, for names of scientists who could be tracked down and questioned. The more people looked, the more convinced they became that something was buried in the Pine Barrens. Some researchers claimed the papers referenced real physics, chaos theory, fractal mathematics, quantum tunneling. It was just enough truth to make the lies harder to spot, and so the story gained weight. If it was a hoax, it was a brilliant one. If it was real, it was evidence of something forbidden. Soon, stories began to surface of people who had gone searching for the lab themselves. Hikers who returned with tales of strange humming noises beneath the ground, lights flashing between the trees, shadows that moved against the wind. One group swore they found a clearing with metal debris, twisted scraps half buried in the soil, as if something had exploded there. They took photographs, but the images were blurry, indistinct, and only deepened the mystery. Others claimed they encountered strangers in the woods, men who warned them away, silent figures watching from the tree line. And always, the sense that someone, or something, was guarding Ong's hat. On internet forums, debates raged. Some insisted the papers were the work of a science fiction writer, an elaborate prank designed to fool the gullible. But others swore the government was involved, that the story was a cover, hiding a real experiment that had gone too far. If you believed those voices, the egg had worked, and the lab in Ong's hat had succeeded in opening a doorway to another world. But the price of discovery was disappearance. The researchers were gone, vanished. Not destroyed, but transported, stepping sideways into a universe just out of reach, and perhaps never coming back. Speculation ran wild. Were the ruins in the Barrens the remains of a failed experiment, or were they nothing more than abandoned cabins mistaken for something greater? Did the Incunabula Papers contain secrets that someone wanted hidden? Or were they nothing more than the world's first viral hoax? The mystery deepened with every unanswered question, because the more people demanded proof, the more silence they met in return. And silence is fertile ground for fear. Ong's hat was no longer just a forgotten name on a map. It was a portal in people's minds, a place where paranoia and possibility mixed until they were impossible to tell apart. And the legend only grew stronger. The ruins of Ong's hat are quiet now. Just moss, stone, and silence. But online, the story refuses to die. The Incunabula Papers left more questions than answers. Were they a hoax? A social experiment? Or fragments of something real that slipped into the public by accident? Some say the egg was built, that it worked, that the people who entered it never returned because they stepped into another world. Others argue it was all theater, a clever fiction designed to trick the curious and lure them deeper. But whether true or false, the effect was the same. Ong's hat became immortal. Not a town on a map, but a legend on the internet. And legends don't fade, they grow. The ghost town in the Pine Barrens was gone, but its mystery had only just begun. Because hidden in the pages of the Incunabula Papers was a story even stranger. A story of outlaw scientists, forbidden experiments, and a doorway that may have opened into another dimension. That is where our journey takes us next, into the heart of the forbidden files themselves.